Well, welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I'm so glad that all of you are joining us as we talk faith, culture, and everything in between. Here we are in Austin, Texas, and so glad to have joining us, as always, is Mrs. Catie Sas.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if this will be your last time, but maybe the last time as a Wells Branch Community Church pastor.
Boo.
Yeah, boo. Joining us is Pastor Joseph Aiken III.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here as my last Wells Branchian.
So
we didn't even have a party.
We're going to have a party.
We should have I should have brought freaking cookies.
Oh, for right now?
Yeah. So terrible.
It's okay.
Yeah, we're going to have a big party.
I'd eat half of one.
Yeah, he will. He's such a terrible party person.
Oh my gosh, you're the half a dessert person.
No, not really. I usually, anytime we do parties, like, Joseph, you gotta eat the cake.
Oh my gosh.
Or do I? Or what you do? Here's the best thing: if you just chew it up and then go to the trash can, just spit it out. You get all the taste with none of the calories.
Or you just live your life and eat the dessert.
Who said I'm not living if I don't eat the?
Yeah, I mean maybe he's living fully.
No, it's like the people
swallowing.
in the break room that come, like if they're donuts, and they slice a donut into fours, and they only eat a fourth of the donut. But you know what they do? But you know what they do? An hour later, they come back and eat another fourth, and then they come back and eat another fourth, and then they eat the whole donut.
Or
and it's
how about this? At least they didn't eat 4 donuts. Maybe they know how they are.
No, I don't do that. Yeah.
Listen, I may be a person might do that. I'll just I'm gonna go have a little bit, and then
just be a little chubby. It's okay. People will still love you.
I'm already chubby. This is me chubby, just so you know.
Oh my gosh.
This is me chubby. This is me eating what I want to eat.
Oh man. All right. So earlier, Catie, you were talking about what flavor of ice cream are we?
Oh yeah. Well, this is one of my fun games that I love to play with Ryan. So sometimes I'll be like, okay, if I was a cocktail, what would I be? If I was an ice cream, what would I be? Mm-hmm. So,
what cocktail are you?
Well, because earlier you said something about like, oh, they're not really our flavor, but we really like them. They're awesome. And I'm like, oh, what is Wells Branch Community Church's flavor?
Right. Well, I meant that. It's like we're a Bible church, and not all churches are Bible churches.
Yeah.
But you clearly were thinking, no, what kind of ice cream?
Yeah, I was thinking of actual flavors. Yeah, like ice creams.
Well,
but yeah.
What flavor would you count us as?
See, then you have to dive into the personality of Wells Branch Community Church. I'm really going to get deep into this, so I don't think people would appreciate the.
You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, give us 30 seconds of what ice cream we are and why.
Okay, well, I feel like our church is kind of a mess sometimes. Like we're just full of like
messy people.
We're just messy. We're just a little messy, and sometimes we don't have everything under control, or all of our ducks are here, but they're not in a row. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like our ducks
rows.
are around, but they're like we don't have a row
really
yet.
Ice cream, we're more like scattered ducks.
No. So we have to dissect and analyze the personality of the church before we can decide the flavor, because you can't just pull this together.
All right. Well, that's your 30 seconds.
There's it. Yeah, that's it.
So we don't know what kind of ice cream we are.
I feel like all the Tony Nelsons of the world are like, oh my gosh, please stop talking.
Yeah, then probably. All right, so let's move forward. We have a great question coming up. This was a recent one that was texted in, and I thought this was sort of fun. I'm watching a show where a military captain of a battleship stayed behind to blow the ship due to it being in enemy territory. The only way to complete the self-destruct protocol was for someone to manually complete it, resulting in his death. Would that be considered suicide in the eyes of God biblically? Give me your thoughts on that, Kate. I would love to hear what your initial thought of that is.
I feel like it's like a self-sacrifice type thing.
Right. So is that suicide?
Is he saving others?
Maybe he's saving the ship from getting into the hands of enemy territory.
Or is he wanting the ship to explode in enemy territory to kill the enemies?
So kamikaze.
Yeah, kamikaze strategy. Yeah. Okay. So first off, I feel like this requires a little bit of a biblical definition of. I think what she's asked, is it sin? Is that what you think she's asking? Is this a sin?
Can you read the question to me one more time?
Yeah. Okay. So a military captain of a battleship stayed behind to blow the ship due to it being in enemy territory. The only way to complete the self-destruct protocol was for someone to manually complete it, resulting in his death. Would that be considered suicide in the eyes of God?
I think, yes. So to your question, is it sin?
Yeah.
Yes.
You said that was what you said.
No, I'm saying to your question, I agree that they're asking that it's if it's sin.
I think that's what
yes,
okay, good.
Yeah,
I think that's what is this sin. Thoughts, Pastor Joseph?
I can't speak for God on this because there's no thing that says, hey, if a man goes into enemy territory and
that's
so,
right.
So it's hard for me, but no, I don't. I mean, when you're talking about war and different things like that, that if this is the only way to do it, I don't think that that's a sin if that's what the question is asking.
All right, so let's take a look at the one person in the Bible that had some.
Who is it?
Had something similar. Oh yeah, this is a good little trivia. Who was a guy in the Bible who killed himself, who may have been very strong, and
are we talking about Samson?
Yes. All right. So in Judges chapter 13 through 16.
Okay, you kind of helped me out a little bit.
I got you.
So Judges 13 through 16 is the story of Samson. You remember the story. Samson was a very strong dude. He was a Nazarite from birth, which means he wasn't supposed to cut his hair. He wasn't supposed to drink alcohol. He wasn't supposed to touch dead things, which he kind of violated all those. And really, it was the length of his, or the non-cutting of his hair that gave him strength, apparently. So he got away with drinking, apparently, because it seemed like he was at parties a lot. And he definitely got away with touching dead things because he picked up a jawbone of a donkey.
What would parties even look like in that time?
Probably not much different than parties today, honestly. I mean, there's the alcohol containers may have been a little bit different. They may have had different labels.
No red Solo cups?
Probably no, is it Pong? No.
Beer pong?
Thank you. Sorry.
But they probably had drinking games.
Yeah, they had drinking games. I'm sure. They probably didn't have keg stands, but they had wine skin stands. All right, so it was somewhat similar. I imagine. So anyway, when his hair gets cut is how he loses his strength. But remember when Delilah cuts his hair, he loses his strength. He is put in jail to gouge out his eyes. And then they come make him perform, and I guess by performing, just to stand in front of all the Philistines at this massive party. And the whole temple or building that they're in was held up by these two massive pillars, which were at least arm's length away. So he asked the servant boy to put him next to the pillar so he could stand up. And so he does, and everyone's sort of jeering at him. And he goes, "God, give me strength one last time," because his hair had started to grow back. He put himself between the two pillars, pushed the pillars over, and 3,000 people died, including Samson. Mm-hmm. So then the question is, was that suicide in the sense that was it sin for him to kill himself? It's almost exactly the same question. Well, and in the Bible at least, it's presented in a way that's honorable. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean it was honorable because it's more descriptive, not prescriptive. But Samson gets into the Hall of Faith somehow from that because he believed God. He believed in the strength that God gave him was for the purpose of being a judge or a deliverer of Israel, and so he did it. And so I think you could say that would, it's still maybe the definition of suicide just simply means self-kill, right? That's all that means. Like homicide means like a human being kill. That's probably not you. And so suicide is you're killing yourself. So there you go. I know that's not very super helpful, but I would say that would be an honorable way to go from a perspective of wanting to protect your country, mm-hmm. And having it's a moment of self-sacrifice. I think where suicide gets to be sinful is where it is
when it's selfish.
Yeah, when it's like, I'm sad, and listen, I get it. People are sad, and you're like, I am not wanting to live, so thou shalt not kill. I mean, we're just go like Exodus 20. Like don't kill. So clearly, don't kill. But we do know that to sacrifice your life to save others is an honorable thing. So, but then that question, usually I get asked this question, is that the unforgivable sin to kill yourself? No, because I mean, clearly, Moses killed a guy, Saul killed a guy, Samson killed himself. And so if you put it into a sense of, you get legalistic about it. I don't know if it's really a legalistic thing, but maybe you can add some flavor to that.
Yes. So I know culturally, for me, growing up in church, that was that sin. You kill yourself, you're going to hell. That's what I don't know if a pastor said it, but I felt like that was just assumed.
Right.
Kill yourself, going to hell. And it wasn't until I got older and started reading for myself we learned that the Bible doesn't say that.
Right. So okay, here's a great story. And I hope I'm not presenting something like everyone go kill themselves, because that's not
not
what I'm saying. But I did have a really, really good friend of mine that had tinnitus. You guys know it, some people pronounce it tinnitus, but it's where you have a ringing in your ears. And it was so piercing, it was maddening. And he was a believer, and he wrote like a suicide note, and he put a plastic all around, and when he shot himself, so that the cleanup would be minimal. But he wrote this letter, and because he was in such pain, and he couldn't get the ringing to stop, and he, again, he trusted God that he saved him, and that he was going to go meet. Now, do I think that was the right way to go? No, but I can understand. I can understand the pain. And so do I think he's in heaven? Yes. Do I think that he maybe missed out on a chance to glorify God through his suffering? Yes. But man, I was not in his shoes, and I really loved him, and it was a sad, sad day when that happened. But I do feel like so that kind of stuff, I don't want to present like, oh, here's your out, but rather that's not a rejection of Jesus. It's I can't handle this pain that I'm enduring. So, yeah, I don't know what do you think when you hear all that, Catie? How do you respond?
No, I mean, I agree. I think suicide and self-sacrifice are different.
Yeah. Okay. If anyone has any issues or questions with that, just let us know. I think we can probably go on with it, because I just know that is something that I get asked a lot concerning suicide, especially for someone who has a loved one that has killed himself, and even people that are contemplating. I've gotten to talk a lot of people off, I don't want to say off the ledge, because it hasn't actually been literal ledges, but like gun to their head, or like I'm going to take these pills, or I'm going to cut myself. And it comes down to God has a plan, and he loves you, and that there is no wasted hurts. And so I think sometimes we take a look at our suffering and we want an out, and we're like, God wouldn't give me more than I can handle. And no, he does. Yeah. And I inevitably I feel like when we start saying that, and I know what people mean, they don't necessarily mean that I'm not going to experience something more than I can handle, because clearly, there's stuff that you can't handle, and I think that's the whole point. But there's no temptation that God's going to give you beyond what you can bear, and God is faithful. He'll provide a way of escape so that you can stand up under that temptation. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it's really challenging. And I think people, maybe that's temptation right there, because that you could say like, there's a way of escape, and the way of escape is crying out to Jesus. But again, it is just such a challenging spot, and such a sensitive topic, and so hard. But I don't think that to tell people that suicide, although a sin, is not the unforgivable sin. I guess the unforgivable sin would be rejecting that Jesus died on the cross for your sins and rose from the dead.
Well, with suicide, you're deciding that no one can help you.
Right. Yeah.
That God cannot help you.
And I would say it's an act of faithlessness. And so that if you go to, let me see if I can find 2 Timothy chapter 3. Or is it 1 Timothy 3? Yeah, I think it might be 1 Timothy 3. And it what it says is, let me see if I got, no, maybe it's 2. Or maybe it's 1. Yeah, okay. Maybe not. I'll have to see where, this is where it gets challenging when you want to pull up something.
I mean, just to, go into experience. I mean, I've been there where all day I would just fantasize about how I was going to take my life. And talk you decide, I had to choose, this is not the way that I'm going to go.
Yeah, I think
it's easy. Like,
well,
to me,
know how comfortable you feel telling us the backstory on that.
No, well, I don't think we have time for the backstory, but the suicide is the easy part. It's taking the easy way out. The hard part is going, no, I'm going to live through this and trust that God will deliver me.
Yeah, I do feel like that. I mean, we're stumbling upon this, not like super intentionally, but now that we're here, I think it would be helpful.
Okay, but how far back do you want me to go?
I mean, I think you can summarize the childhood stuff and then get us to what you were feeling a couple years ago.
So childhood sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. And then a year later after that, attempted suicide as a 14-year-old. And then...
How did you try to do that?
I swallowed a handful of pills. And then instantly, maybe within 30 minutes after doing it, the reality of it as a 14-year-old kind of hit me, the panic of like, crap, wait, I don't want to do this. So told my mom that I didn't tell her why I did it, but I told her what I had done. And so she made me swallow Epicac and I barfed it all up. But then, so fast forward 12, 13 years later, the sexual abuse memories come up and I started reliving the suicidal thoughts.
Repressed for like 13 years? And
yes.
Then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this happened.
Just with someone asking me a question, it all comes up. And so I'm reliving that trauma again as if it had just happened. And I end up hiding it. I wasn't talking to Ryan about it. I wasn't talking to anyone about how I was feeling. And so all day I would just sit and want to escape my thoughts. I would want to escape the trauma replaying in my head over and over and over again, because it wasn't just mentally, it was physically. You remember how everything felt. You remember how emotional it was, how you zoned out, how you blame yourself, you relive the guilt, the shame of it was my fault, I should have tried harder to get him off, I should have, you do all of that stuff in your head. And so, my heart is racing. And so, yeah, I just fantasized about taking my life, and I would fantasize about driving my car off of a bridge. And I was so close to doing it that I was like, I have to tell Ryan. I have to tell him, or he's going to come home to a wife that bought a container of pills.
And were you a mom at this point?
Not yet, but I knew I wanted to be a mom. Mm-hmm. And so, I know what it's like being in that space where you think there's no way out, no one's going to get it, no one can help you, this is too big, it's too hard, it's too heavy, and you just want a way out. You just want to not exist anymore. Like you don't want to hurt yourself. It's not like I want to like stab myself, or I didn't want to cut myself. I just wanted to not live anymore so that I wouldn't have to feel that way. And so I think in those situations where I think that's where a lot of people are that eventually do take their life, they simply just don't want to feel anymore. It's too much. And so they just want to peacefully go.
Well, back to the verse I was looking for, and this kind of you get to a point of faithlessness. So it's not like you were denying Jesus. No, I
knew that God was good, but I didn't want to take the time to wait for him to help me through this.
Right. And the verse then is, if we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. What it means is once you have the Holy Spirit in you, you may not be able to process life, but he has a grip on you forever and ever. And even when you are faithless, he is faithful, for he cannot disown once he becomes one with you by giving you the gift of the Holy Spirit, indwelling you, then you are God's now and forever. And so that's the hope that we have even when things get really, really dark. Mm-hmm. How did you tell that to Ryan, and then what was help going forward looking like?
Well, talking to Ryan about it was really helpful, because little by little it kind of becomes like what is the word, like you're chipping away at, like whenever people are like making statues.
Yeah, chipping.
Like
sculpting, or
like you're chipping away at your trauma and these big feelings little by little.
Talk about it. So when you say chipping away, like, hey, here's your issue. You're like, this is this trauma. Let me get that off of you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it's still big. It still exists, but the heaviness, like you get rid of the heaviness of it, the more you open up, and it's like confession. Mm-hmm. So I talked to Ryan about it, and then I talked to close best friends and told them everything that I've been feeling for like the last several months, and then went to therapy. So there are tangible steps that you need to take if you're experiencing suicidal thoughts. So therapy was huge, and then I told my story at, Encounter.
Yeah, a women's event. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. That was powerful. I think I still remember watching it going like, wow, this is the most intense thing ever.
And no, like looking back, I mean, it was a stubborn season because I didn't want anyone to know. Mm-hmm. Like I was in ministry, we were deacons, we were community group shepherds, and I did not tell anyone. And so that made it 10 times worse because I needed to be treated differently because I was just a disaster internally, but I wasn't being treated differently. And so and it was my fault because I wasn't open about like, hey, this is the trauma that I'm facing, and this is why I'm pushing back so hard, and this is why I'm struggling so hard. But instead, it just looked like I was. So was
that the first time when you gave that talk at Encounter? Was that the first time anyone knew about that?
That was the first time more than like 6 people knew. So. Yeah.
Like I remember watching it and thinking, wow, she's really processed this thing really well. I was like, gosh, man. I'm like last on the no here. Wow, powerful. So what does it look like now for you as a woman of God? Because I'm sure you get to a place of sadness every now and then, that sort of those thoughts or whatever, that feeling comes back. And so how are you able to, I don't know, take every thought captive, make it, submissive to Christ?
Yeah.
How do you?
So when those intrusive thoughts come back and I feel myself getting into this really dark space, I have a mantra. I know it sounds really cheesy, but you learn these things in therapy to grow. And so when I start to feel those same feelings, I remind myself, I am safe and I am loved. I'm safe and I'm loved. And I just repeat that to myself in my head. I am safe and I am loved.
Wow.
Until I start to come back to reality.
I think that's good. I think that's just taking thought captive by putting the truth in there. I mean, clearly, in God, you are in Psalm 91. You are His refuge. He is your refuge. You are clearly loved by God. That's all over the place. And so I feel like you're putting biblical truth to a pain. And I do think one of the things I've found to be helpful just in anxiety in general, and maybe this will speak to what you experienced, and I'd love to hear if it did, is naming the fear or naming what I'm sad about, naming what I'm anxious about out loud. Like saying like, I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm whatever the thing is, and then I can take, because I think a lot of times there's feelings that I can't fully wrap my head around why I'm feeling, but my body has a physiological response to something emotional, and so I have a delayed response in general with emotions. And so what happens is I need to go and figure it out, to name it, to then tame it. and bring it before the Lord so that He can speak truth to me. Does that ring anything with you, or like how? Talk to me about how that helps. Or
well, I mean, saying I am feeling fear because X, Y, and Z. So like if you're in a situation where you've become triggered, so like if I suddenly am triggered by something and then I'm like, I say to myself, you are feeling this because of this, and because it reminds you of this. And so you're walking yourself through your feelings. And this is, I know to some people it sounds ridiculous, but you walk yourself through your feelings, why you're feeling this way, where it's coming from, and how you can allow yourself to get to the other side. So it's a process.
And you're saying the other side of this emotion, other side of this fear. Because
you can't, it's like a train in a tunnel.
Okay.
The train has to go through the tunnel.
Right.
The train can't stop halfway through the tunnel, or it won't. Like you can't just say, stop feeling this.
Right.
You have to let yourself feel this emotion so you can better understand it, so that next time it's more familiar and the train gets through the tunnel faster. It's all about, okay, how can I process a little quicker each time?
Beautiful.
I don't know if a therapist would explain it that way, but that's how I've kind of coped.
So since you've since this has come out, since you shared that openly, maybe the best way to put that. Have people reached out and said, hey, I've got this thing and I'm struggling, or have you been a place to minister from that, or is that something that you just don't in general bring up unless someone's really specific about it?
No, that was actually something that was really hard for me after I shared all of it. It wasn't really like people. I shared all of that in hopes that I would get help from others, and I would kind of have this support team from maybe girls that have experienced the same thing, and it just didn't really happen. I mean, there was one girl that I had coffee with who was like, yeah, me too, that happened to me too, but it wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't like, when someone, like I know that when a mom experiences a miscarriage, then, there's a meal train started, there are these things that happen, there are all these women that kind of reach out, I'm so sorry, this was me too, but that wasn't really the case for me, and I understand that that's not something that girls want to talk about.
Yeah.
Or even men. I mean, men that have experienced that too. And so that was just something that I kind of had to like adjust to.
So you wanted a support group?
I wanted to not feel alone in it. And I felt very alone after. The thing that was really good was, me sharing this big thing and talking about vulnerability and openness started a conversation with a lot of other girls. But I think I felt something that I wasn't expecting to feel afterwards. I felt very lonely.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anytime you do public speaking, you feel naked. I mean, and you're very vulnerable.
And like I unloaded this really big thing, and I don't know. And I wasn't expecting something crazy to happen after, but I also wasn't expecting to feel kind of lonely.
Yeah.
Because everyone would say, you did great. This was really great. This was powerful. But like, man, I was still sorting through a lot of trauma, and I wanted someone to come alongside me and go, this happened to me too, and I want to help. Like, I want to walk with you through it.
Right. And I think anytime you say something publicly, like, people assume you're...
Yeah, I think people assumed, like you said, assumed that I was, like, in a good place, that I was, like,
because it was such a well-done talk that it was like, man, it was like, she must have done this before.
Yeah. Like, I've even felt led to, like, start a ministry for women that have experienced sexual abuse, but I don't really know how that would even... I don't even know what that would look like, because I wanted that. I wanted a place to go.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, well, if I wanted a place to go and we don't have that,
does
that mean that I start that, but I don't even know what the hell was.
Well, sure, and then we can. Yeah, I feel like wow, if that's a desire of your heart, we can totally get. You're hearing the brainstorm method right now.
Now I'm like, shoot, I don't want to like say something and then I have to like do something about it. So
yeah, that conviction thing. All right, so all right, so looking forward to hearing about how Catie Sas starts a new ministry, and so that's why you stay tuned to Pastor Plek's podcast, because things are happening live as we record. You weren't expecting that on this episode.
No, we weren't.
Gotcha.
And so. Yeah, that's why you listen, and I'm so grateful you do. So thanks for tuning to Pastor Plek's podcast. If you want to join the conversation, you can text us 737-231-0605, or you can go to pastorplek.com and leave a question or comment there. We would love to hear from you. Thankful for your vulnerability. That was powerful, and I do think if you are a person that's really struggling with sexual abuse as someone who's received it and been hurt by that in your past, whether as a child or maybe as an adult, I want you to reach out to Catie. How can people get a hold of you?
My phone number is
Phone number?
No, I don't want to do phone number. I don't know what my
Instagram,
email? Do people email?
Yeah, like Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah, you can do me. Okay, why are you looking at me like I was just supposed to know that? Like my contact is my phone. Okay, so we can put my Instagram handle on the show notes.
There you go.
Instagram. So let's do that.
Is it Catie Sas Photography or something?
No, my personal is just Catie Sas.
Oh, there you go. Find
with a C.
3 E's. Yeah, it's CATIEEESAS.
Oh, I didn't. Catie Sas. All right. Well, I don't know how else to land the plane other than that. That was pretty amazing. So, hey, thanks for joining us on Pastor Plek's podcast, and have an awesome week of worship.